Hello and welcome to BUZ Banter. I'm Darksiders.
And I'm Sam.
And today we come to you with another video game review. We've been doing a lot of these lately. So what's on the list today?
Today is Darksiders 2.
Yay! So, after the events of the first game, where you played as War and had the epically badass ending where you said not alone and you had the 3 comets coming down, seriously play the game. It was worth it for the end. And the game itself
You also
was pretty
kind of
good.
ruined it, you should have said spoilers.
You had enough time. Considering how much hype this game was garnering throughout its advertising campaign.
This game actually, I think, got the appropriate amount of hype. It wasn't like overhyped like other games.
I don't
know, I felt it.
I was worried. Honestly, like, I have that rule where after a certain level of advertising, I just kind of, like, take a step back from it. This one, I don't know, the last little while it really got...
We'll agree to disagree on the advertising.
Fair enough, but the advertising is not what we review, it's the game itself.
It's quite true.
And so, let's get into it. In terms of gameplay, this was a big complaint that a lot of people had with the first game, where it didn't really have its own sort of gameplay, it just took from other games.
Yeah, here's my issue with that. That happens in every game.
Well, not to this broadest scale.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could really pick out every mechanic and call it what it is, but I mean, if you take a look at a game like Borderlands, its loot system is the same as Diablo. It's a first-person shooter like every other first-person shooter, and its driving, I think, was the only thing somewhat unique. I haven't played too many driving games, so I'm not too sure if it was the same.
No, even the driving was fairly standard fare.
But I mean, you could really, like, it's kind of broad, but it was more specific for Darksiders,
well,
where it was...
For Darksiders, you didn't have a loot system in the first game.
No, but you still gathered stuff, I think. You gathered souls.
You gathered souls, you got various upgrades and power upgrades, but it was more of just like an RPG just for your character, not your equipment.
The big 3 were it was like God of War.
Yeah.
Even the character was named War.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zelda. Zelda was the big one. And hints of Portal. There was like one thing with Portal.
Yeah, there was the thing with Portal. And Legend of Zelda was the very big one. Reason being, you had like that world navigation, you had the hook shot, you had...
Well, it wasn't even just that. It was the fact that I went to specific dungeons, got an item to get through the dungeon and beat the final boss at the end, and then I just kept going until I got to the final guy. Anyone can name a game like that? Ocarina of Time, maybe?
Yeah.
It played the exact same way.
Yeah, it did. And, but that being said, being able to merge all of these various elements, taking like Legend of Zelda style gameplay, maturing it and everything with having Kratos thrown in there.
I also forgot the boomerang. It had a boomerang.
Yeah, it had a boomerang.
Spinning blade, but it was a boomerang.
You also had the thrown bombs and the pistol and everything to blow things up and all that.
Yeah, but you didn't carry them with you.
Well, you could after you picked them up and you just kind of ran around like,
You actually can do that more in Darksiders too, because if you carried them around too long in the first one, they kind of exploded.
And they exploded. In this one, you can carry them around as long as you want.
But it's actually more like you throw the boomerang to get fire to a certain place.
Yeah.
You did that. But anyways, in this one...
you got Prince of Persia kind of scaling the walls and everything. Death plays very differently than his brother.
He does play he's more athletic, he dodges more. Like, you could dodge in the first one. Now, they actually put the story and the fluff into this one, so
yeah.
Death is not as strong as his brother War, even though War's younger, but he is more experienced, he's more agile, he's quicker. Dodging is one of the best mechanics in this whole game.
Yeah, the control scheme for it's very tight, and the clever thing that they did was, and you wouldn't think it's a clever thing just hearing it, but until you actually play it, they removed the block button. War, when you played Darksiders, in the first Darksiders game, War had a block button.
Yeah, he could. He had a big friggin' fist. He could just stop you.
Exactly. He just stopped most incoming attacks, and of course he had the power attacks that you just had to dodge. Death doesn't have that option. He's an incredibly resilient character. Like, I've noticed that the amount of damage that he takes is actually proportionately less than what War used to take.
Depending on who you're fighting.
Depending on who you're fighting, but it racks up simply because you're not You're not sort of stable on the ground. You have to be jumping around and everything.
There are also some other changes too.
The enemy AI actually really the enemy AI really works towards this as well. I find that they're a lot more aggressive in this, and they're a lot more mobile in this.
Oh, they do way more. The enemy AI, their patterns are a lot more fresh, except for maybe the bosses. The bosses would have to be the one thing that they're not as.
Which is the same thing with Legend of Zelda anyway, and if you're willing to make
actually the same for a lot of games.
Well, you know what? Like, I'm not going to hang a game on a single issue. And quite frankly, the bosses are very interesting to fight. They are very interesting to look at. They have a sort of grand scale to them, for the most part.
But they're also incredibly easy when compared to the lesser enemies.
They are.
They are incredibly easy. The other enemies I have a harder time with than the bosses. As soon as you figure out the patterns of the bosses, it's kind of like the problem with Arkham City had, where other than the one exception, all the bosses were really easy.
Exactly. Freeze was the only one that you really
Freeze was one of the best boss fights I ever had. But there are differences in terms of gameplay. One being, they changed the Zelda theme and they've made it into a lesser extent, because now there's dungeons you don't even have to go to progress the story. You can just go to them to complete side missions.
Yeah. They made it a little bit more of a typical RPG.
They did.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but here's my problem with the game. And this is a big one for me. What I loved about the first Darksiders wasn't its gameplay, which was solid. It was its story, because it did something that I hadn't seen in a while. Which was, it took like your standard fare of like heaven, hell, and the battle between the two, and it turned it all on its head.
So you haven't seen that in a game, I might like to say.
Well, yeah, I hadn't seen that in a game, and I actually really liked the lore behind Darksiders, and the first game was a very story-driven game. They needed to establish the world, they needed to establish the characters, what was going on, and you know what, it was really enjoyable. I immediately started to care for war, and just the opening sequence of that, seeing the apocalypse happening, coming down as war, and hearing these characters voice these questions without any context, it immediately immerses you in the environment. And playing as war while you're invincible, while you're in your war avatar form, and then gradually losing your powers until you suddenly have a health bar, that was a great introduction to seeing how this world is set up, and the sort of peak that war is at, and how you fall. The last game to do something like that was, I think, Mega Man 10, where you started off, the first boss that you faced as Mega Man, you couldn't stop. Like, you couldn't kill him, no matter what you did. You couldn't damage him enough, and it was only when you were near death that you would have Zero come and save you. And then over the course of the game, you saw that, like, all of the stuff that you got gradually made Mega Man look more like Zero. You gained the dash attack, you gained, like, the stronger charge, you gained all the various upgrades.
Didn't God of War do that? God of War 2?
God of War 2, well, here's the thing, like, War, in the first Darksiders game, you start out at your pinnacle, you're essentially Zero, and you see yourself fall.
God of War 2, you start off as the God of War, and then you have to give up all your power.
Well, yeah, you need to give up all your power and everything, but the thing is, because you had started from the base level in the first game and worked your way up, it wasn't it wasn't your introduction to it. That's what I'm saying. Okay. In the first God of War, your introduction wasn't that I see that and I want to be that. It was, that's an idea that I want to achieve. Okay. Whereas this, you're like, War, you lose all your powers, and then you're immediately in the cinematic where you're on trial.
It's also gotten turned into a Darksiders 1 review.
Well, I just want to compare the introductions.
Okay.
Immediately after that, you're on trial in front of the council, they've stripped you of your power, and suddenly you have your explanation that, I came early, he's questioning where his brothers are, because obviously there was some sort of thing that went wrong.
Something's gone wrong, yeah.
There's questions being raised on all sides. It's kind of a whodunit story in the middle of this, and you're gradually trying to regain your powers as you try to prove your innocence. Fantastic. Let's get on with it.
Well, the problem wasn't the story itself, because a lot of reviewers and a lot of people actually thought the story was kind of weak. Not because of what it was, like on paper it was nice, but the way it was told, because a lot of people easily, like one of the biggest problems with the first one was the misconception of who the end boss, who he was.
Right.
Everyone thought that was the devil, but then it wasn't. It's like, no, his name is referring to a... He's just a lord. He's not. He's not the be all end all.
And that's the price that you pay for having that level of immersion, where you don't explain anything. There's like no exposition. You're just immediately.
Yeah, you have to do some research. Also, some line delivery came back, like when you were talking about the ending. Like that was a cool ending, but it also had one of the worst line deliveries I've ever heard in a video game.
Which one?
When Uriel, she's talking about.
You will be hunted and all.
Actually, it's. Right before that, she's talking about how she was planning it all, and then all of a sudden her tone changes, like in half a second.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that kind of like killed me with the line delivery.
That's fair enough, but that was in the first Darksiders. Now, just to compare the introductions, with this one you have a massive amount of exposition. Not in cinematic form. You have it in an art style form, which is nice. It's
actually their cinematic art style.
It's like their cinematic graphic art style and everything. Yeah. I like it. I don't mind it. And then
Witcher 2 actually does the same thing.
And then you're immediately Death writing, and the exposition just says that War is in chains at the feet of the council, and you are his brother trying to prove his innocence. I'm sorry, compared to the last game's introduction, this is very weak.
But you also gotta remember, that was War's game. This is Death's game.
This is Death's game, yes, but actually having Death come before the council, outraged that, why is my brother in chains, what happened?
Well, one of the things is that...
Would have been interesting. Like, that was a perfect opportunity to have, like, you could have basically exposed all of Death's character. The same way all of what War is as a character is expressed in his introduction. You had that opportunity here as well, and you missed it.
I'd say that'd be a minor problem.
But I would agree with you if it wasn't a problem that kept happening, because what I found like, don't get me wrong, the game as a whole is good, but you need to get through the first 2 hours of it, and that's the problem. It didn't hook me.
I actually disagree. Because of all the missions, I kept going, I need to do one more, I need to do one more mission. Didn't matter if it was a main mission or a side mission, I had to keep going.
But the thing is, there's no establishment of any of the characters. There's no, like, proper establishment. I don't care about any of these people.
But keep in mind, he's Death, first of all.
Well, he's Death, but the last guy was War. I mean, for God's sakes, how difficult is it to be the character of War? You've never had to, like, pine over a lost girlfriend or go looking for a job. You're War, you break things.
I'd say being Death is a bit harder. You're kind of like...
No, you just go and kill people. You're called Kinslayer. Who cares? You just kill people.
He's also arrogant. He's also funny. He's pretty funny.
He gets funny, but the thing is, that's all stuff that you get to eventually, and it's so slow to come out that you don't care about him for the beginning.
See, that's where I kind of
in the entire Forgelands, I don't care about him. I care more about the makers and hoping to see what's his name from the first game again.
Oh, you're not gonna see Ulthwyn. I could have told you that one.
But like, I don't care about him in the beginning of this game. I care about him later.
I actually disagree, because that actually adds a level of dimension. He really cares about his brother, and what really came when he was talking in the beginning thing and to the Growfather, it's just like, what if he did do it? And he's just like, no, he did not. And it really comes up, because not only is he like the sarcastic, funny one apparently, but he's like really devout on what, like, he really loves his brother.
Yeah, well,
I mean, there's level of dimension.
Well, like, it works into the lore that they have, because Death was the one that, out of the four of them, he killed the most of the Nephilim. He was like the initial vanguard.
He's also the
he's the keeper of their souls, essentially.
Well, he gave the souls. He was the one who breathed them. He gave them to somebody else. But
yeah,
that's all spoilers. Anyways,
spoilers that you find out in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah. But anyways, the reason why I'm saying is that the actual missed opportunity isn't... That scene, I agree, is a missed opportunity. The other missed opportunity is that you don't get to see more concern for the brother. I wish they put more scenes like that in.
Yeah,
but
like, he seems to get so distracted.
I don't know, I'm so used to these types of RPGs, it just becomes second nature to me. So, I mean, it's... Because you said, it's like a typical RPG, and every RPG does the thing that it's doing.
But that... That's the sad part, because the first Darksiders game wasn't like that. It wasn't that typical.
But then you have another thing, because with this Darksiders, it's at least trying to find its own identity. Because it's not taking things that are in specific games,
True.
It's taking game mechanics, which is more accepted.
Yeah, that's true.
And it even lowers the likeness to other games.
It does, and I will grant it that. It is trying to find its own character and everything. It's a very fun game. The art style in this is
the art style is
beautifully done.
I love it. And like I said, I love Death. I actually like him more than War. I just like playing him more. I actually like hearing him talk more, because whenever I hear him talk, it's the bad guy from Crow, because that's who voices him. It is the bad guy from the movie Crow.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that when I found out. And actually, you were talking about how you didn't like the accent. I couldn't hear that.
There's an accent that he has that comes and goes that I've noticed.
What I actually heard is that his voice just kind of gets raspier at a certain point.
Yeah.
When he talks louder, but then he always talks softly.
Like, I
don't know. I don't mind it. I actually like the way he talks.
I'm trying to get into it. It's just the level of consistency that in this game, compared to the last one, isn't there. But that being said, I like the dungeons a lot better in this one. I like the puzzles a lot more.
Puzzles are so much more fun.
Yeah, they're not tedious at all.
This is what I mean. Like, this is part of what makes this game, I think, better, is that...
it's definitely a refinement, I'm not denying that.
Yeah, like, when I'm playing it, like, the other Darksiders, I tried to replay it, and I got so bored with it.
Yeah.
But when I play this game, I mean, this is still my first playthrough. I don't know what it's going to be like on a second playthrough. But it's like, I want to do one more. I'm like, it's like 4 in the morning, I got to do one more mission. I have to, like, tell myself to stop.
Yeah.
There is technical issues that this thing has issues with.
The server link-up was down for... I think it's still down, actually.
I've been fine with the server link-up right now. Well, on the PS3, you're playing the Xbox version, I'm playing the PS3 version.
Yeah.
PS3 version's fine when it comes to that.
Yeah, for the Xbox version, there's been an issue with server link-ups for, what was it, pre-order... content and everything, just picking up the things.
Yeah, the only pre-order there's like one pre-order content you have to wait for, Augers too.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's not the point what I was trying to make. What I was trying to make is you have to load. You're always going to run into loading screens in every portion of this game. Like whenever you enter a new area, loading screen.
Yeah.
And with the problem with that, I don't know if it's actually what's affecting it, but apparently across all platforms, it's freezing.
Yeah,
there's been some freezing, unfortunately.
There's been a lot of reports of the game freezing up.
I ran into it twice. I know another reviewer who ran into it on the Xbox 360 version.
What other reviewer? We're the only ones on the internet that do this.
Obviously, is another guy. It was just this random guy, and I know for sure the PC has had more problems than any of it.
Yeah,
mainly because it's the PC version.
I haven't run into any issues, but that being said, I take it in staggered amounts.
Yeah, I go the long haul. When I go back home today, I'm gonna be playing that till like 4.
Without a doubt. Unfortunately, this hasn't addicted me the same way other games have and everything. But that being said, it's a solid game. I've always liked a lot. The gameplay, the controls are very tight. Combat's fun. It's fluid. You don't feel overpowered or underpowered. You have a nice balance.
I also think the other thing you have is that the other game's faster paced with the story. This game is much slower.
Yes.
This game is a lot slower because it really takes its time to breathe.
Well, it's not just that it takes its time to breathe. They said that we've created a much larger overworld. It's like 5 times larger than what you had in the last one.
The first world's about the same size, and there's like 3 other worlds.
But it feels like the story's needlessly stretched out or padded out just so you can fit in more worlds.
Yeah, well, that's because it wasn't a strong story to begin with. It wasn't a strong story. It was a basic story.
It was a basic story, but they had the groundwork there to do something very special with it here. And like I said, as a concept, the way that they have the dichotomy between heaven and hell working, and the Shard Council, and the Nephilim, and the Horsemen, and the various worlds, and the Makers, and all of that, they had a very rich, fertile ground, especially left off from the last game, to really bring out the story. The gameplay itself definitely developed. Story, I think, it took a step back.
In my agree to disagree.
In my opinion, at least the presentation of the story took a step back, in my opinion.
Well, maybe presentation-wise. I still kind of like the story. I still like talking to the characters. I don't mind them. I like Karn, the one character in there, the pup. I like the little dialogue they had when you first meet him. It's like, 3 people call me Pup or Lad, but I prefer them to call me by my name, Karn. It's like, well, then I will call you Pup.
Yeah, because you're Death. You don't put up with anything.
This is what I mean. This is why I like Death more. He's like funny like that.
Yeah, he is.
Like that one line is like, Death, you're awesome.
Though I really do miss the voice of Mark Hamill as the Watcher. I was kind of
he's retiring that voice, because that was essentially Joker voice. That's why you liked it, be honest.
Yeah.
That guy was a dick. You wanted him to die.
Yeah. He was. But every time he spoke, I was just like, demonic Joker.
Yeah, but yeah. Yeah.
He's wonderful.
That's all I'm saying. It's just like, yeah,
but he was wonderful.
That wasn't part. The reason why you like him wasn't part of the game. It was for other nostalgic reasons.
True.
And that's never a.
And he's a cool-looking demon.
He is a cool-looking demon. I'll give you that.
Well, was, but whatever.
Yeah, but
spoiler alert.
We keep doing that afterwards, but I like. The only thing is, like, there's other gameplay hitches, like Dust is the new Watcher. He doesn't talk though, but. Most of the time he works, but every once in a while he'll
go back to a door that you just walked out of.
Yeah, you like don't get it, and you kind of have to figure it out on your own. But it's hit or miss with him.
I don't mind having your various powers, the loot system and everything. Being able to feed weapons to possessed weapons and make them stronger.
That's really cool.
That's a nice.
The one thing I kind of wished they didn't do it, and I'm kind of happy they didn't. But the inner mainstream version of me kind of wishes is that they're all supposed to have special weapons, and technically he doesn't have any of his special size unless... Yeah, he doesn't have his size, like, whatever his size. Does he not care, or is War the only one with special weapons?
That's the one thing. I think his scythe is on... Because he's got the Reaper powers as his magical powers and everything.
You think it's the one that's...
I think his proper scythe is actually when he's in his Reaper form. The same way that Chaos Eater isn't a War Sword when he turns into like his...
Well, it's really more just a stretched energy blade that he's...
Well, it's a stretched energy blade thing, but I think that those are their sort of avatar forms of like death, war, and that sort of thing, and this is them running around and being able to make coffee.
Makes me wonder, like, what happens. I'm also really curious what they'll do with the other two.
I'm really interested to see what they'll do with Fury and Strife. I'm definitely interested in the third game.
That's what I'm also thinking is, like, these are both groundwork for the third game. Like, they're going to do something cool with the third one that these two are going to lead up towards.
If they don't have 4-player co-op in the third game, I'm going to be very, very, very disappointed.
I kind of don't want them to, because I don't think Vigil does multiplayer all that well.
They don't, but...
Well, I mean, Vigil, I don't think they have... I don't know about co-op, but... I don't know, it's just... I'd be worried if they did 4-player co-op. I would just like them to be in the game. I don't care if I can play
okay, not co-op, like, through the story, but co-op in, like, their sort of Crucible chamber thing.
Oh, okay.
That would be... I think I'd have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
So Darksiders 2, technically, very good,
solid
solid
writing. This game is fantastic.
It's a solid game, very fun game.
Another thing I have to say is that you don't feel the grind with the little bit of story it gives you. I don't feel it.
I'll disagree. I'm a big story junkie, so...
I like story too, mind you. But
no, you like story. I love story. That's the difference.
I love story too, but I don't know,
well, you're just changing your answer.
So, I do like story. It's one of the reasons I hate Call of Duty, is the story is crap.
Everyone hates Call of Duty. Even Call of Duty players hate Call of Duty.
I know.
But, so until next time, I'm Das Hats.
I'm Sam.
And we will see you when we see you.
We'll see you. That went longer than we thought.
Well, if you please stop talking... What's the button?